Okay, so we are diving into something that's been generating a lot of conversation lately.
Mm-hmm.
It's how we understand and represent autism.
Yep.
Specifically, we're looking at the shift that's been happening from the puzzle piece symbol to the rainbow infinity.
Right.
You sent over some really thought-provoking articles on this, and it's clear that this is more than just like swapping out logos, right?
Absolutely. It's you hit the nail on the head. It's
Mhm.
like this whole debate about symbols has like unearthed some much deeper questions about what it even means to be a part of the autism community,
Yeah.
Questions about identity, about who gets to represent whom,
Mm-hmm.
about what image truly resonates with like the lived experiences of autistic individuals.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because one of the articles that you sent actually argues that this whole debate about symbols can actually sometimes feel like a distraction
Yes.
from the real issues.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a perspective worth considering.
Okay.
The article, I think it was written by an autistic self-advocate,
Mm-hmm.
was arguing that while symbols can be very powerful,
Yeah.
they can also become a bit of a shiny object
Okay.
that diverts attention from maybe more pressing systemic barriers that need dismantling.
So it's like we're so busy arguing about the logo that we forget to like build the actual building, so to
Yeah,
speak.
exactly. And this author makes a really good point, which is that this is something that we see in other movements too, like
Mm-hmm.
other social justice movements,
Yeah.
where sometimes that like urgency for change gets channeled into these like symbolic victories,
Right.
when what's really needed are more systemic shifts
Yeah.
in policy, in resources, and in attitudes.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That's a really good reminder to keep that bigger picture in mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, let's unpack these symbols a little bit further because, like you said, they do hold power.
They do.
The puzzle piece, for instance, has been around forever, right?
Right.
Why is it suddenly getting so much pushback?
Yeah. So the puzzle piece,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was intended to represent the complexity of autism
Okay.
with this idea that each individual is a unique piece of a larger puzzle.
Yeah.
And for some, it still holds that meaning.
Right.
But what's happened over time is that many autistic people
Yeah.
have started to feel like it implies something else, like that they were somehow like incomplete or missing something.
Like a puzzle with a missing piece. You're not whole.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a message that, really clashes with this growing movement within the autism community to really embrace this idea of neurodiversity.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that, neurological differences are a natural part of human variation.
And that's where the rainbow infinity symbol kind of comes in.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it's a different perspective.
Precisely. And, the infinity symbol with its continuous loop, it represents the infinite ways in which autism can manifest.
Yeah.
Right. So it rejects this idea that there's one right way to be autistic.
I love that. And the rainbow colors, of course, symbolize.
Celebrating neurodiversity in all its glory. It acknowledges that no two experiences on the spectrum are exactly alike.
Right.
Just like no two colors in the rainbow are exactly alike.
So we've got these two symbols, right? Each kind of representing these different aspects of how we view autism.
Right.
But one of the articles you sent pointed out that even the rainbow infinity symbol isn't universally loved
Right.
within the autistic community.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Yeah, it's a great example of why this conversation is so complex and nuanced.
Yeah.
Because just like with any community, there's never going to be like a one-size-fits-all representation
Right.
that will resonate with every single person. And that's okay.
Okay, so forcing everyone under one umbrella, even if it's a rainbow umbrella, isn't really the answer.
Exactly, yeah. And this article highlighted how some autistic individuals felt that the rainbow infinity, while visually appealing,
Yeah.
can still feel a bit abstract or even infantilizing
Okay.
to like some adults on the spectrum.
Interesting. So if we move beyond the symbols themselves, then
Yeah.
what are some of the key takeaways from these articles about where autism advocacy needs to go? It
Mhm.
feels like there's this real hunger for like tangible action.
Absolutely. And one of the articles, I think it was written by a parent of an autistic child,
Okay.
really struck a chord with me.
Yeah.
It talked about how awareness is important,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not enough.
Right.
We need to move beyond to simply recognizing that autism exists
Yeah.
and start creating a society that actually truly embraces and includes autistic individuals.
Speaking of inclusion, another article you shared dove into like the challenges that autistic individuals face when it comes to employment.
Yes.
And I know from our listeners and the questions that we get,
Right.
this is something that people really want to know more about.
It's huge. Yeah. And this article does a really good job of kind of outlining some of the key issues.
Okay.
Like, did you know that despite having valuable skills and talents, autistic adults actually have one of the lowest employment rates
Wow.
of any disability group?
I did not realize it was that significant.
Yeah.
What are some of the factors that are contributing to that disparity?
Well, one factor is that traditional hiring practices often create barriers
Okay.
for autistic individuals.
Okay.
So think about things like job interviews,
Right.
which can be really stressful
Yeah.
and anxiety-provoking for someone with social communication differences.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So how do we start to kind of dismantle some of these barriers and create more inclusive workplaces?
Well, the good news is that there are companies and organizations out there who are really leading the way
Okay.
in showing what's possible.
Okay.
And this article highlighted a program called Autism at Work,
Mm-hmm.
which partners with businesses
Okay.
to create autism-inclusive workplaces.
Mm-hmm.
And so they provide training for hiring managers,
Yeah.
support for autistic employees,
Okay.
and they help create work environments that really take into account things like sensory sensitivities
Right.
and different communication styles.
It's incredible, and it sounds like a win-win for everyone involved.
Yeah.
And then autistic individuals get access to these, like, really meaningful employment opportunities.
Precisely. And, this program is just one example.
Okay.
There are other innovative approaches out there, like social enterprises, that are specifically designed to employ autistic individuals.
Oh.
Yeah. And, really provide them with the support they need to thrive.
It's inspiring to see these success stories.
Yeah.
Now, aside from employment, what are some other areas where we can work towards creating a more inclusive society?
Well, education is a big one.
Okay.
One of the articles you sent, I believe, was written by an autistic teacher,
Mm-hmm.
really emphasized the need for more neurodiversity affirming practices in schools.
Can you give an example of what that might look like in the classroom?
Absolutely. So this article talked about the importance of sensory-friendly classrooms. So things like having designated quiet spaces,
Right.
using natural lighting instead of fluorescent lights,
Yeah, okay.
providing, noise-canceling headphones or earplugs for students who need them.
Those are such a simple adjustments, but I'm sure they can make a world of difference.
Huge, huge difference.
For a student who's really sensitive to sensory input.
Exactly. And it's not just about, these like physical accommodations either.
Okay.
It's about creating learning environments that actually value different ways of thinking and learning.
Okay.
So, some autistic students might excel at visual learning,
Mm-hmm.
while others might thrive with more hands-on activities.
So it's about recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to education.
Exactly.
Just like there's no one-size-fits-all experience of autism.
100% is about recognizing those individual strengths and needs
Mm-hmm.
of each student,
Mm-hmm.
and then providing the support they need to succeed.
Right.
And that includes social and emotional learning as well.
Okay.
Many autistic individuals benefit from explicit instruction
Okay.
in social skills
Mm-hmm.
and emotional regulation.
And that ties back to something that we were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah.
About the importance of listening to autistic voices.
Absolutely.
Who better to tell us what kind of support they need
Right.
than autistic people themselves?
100%. And this is where the concept of neurodiversity, I think, really shines.
Mm-hmm.
It's about recognizing that neurological differences are a natural part of human variation,
Right.
not something to be,
Yeah.
fixed or cured.
So rather than trying to make autistic people more neurotypical, so to speak, it's about creating a world that values and embraces their unique perspectives and contributions.
You got it. And it's important to note that this isn't just about,
Mm-hmm.
making life better for autistic individuals.
Mm-hmm.
It's about creating a richer and more inclusive society for everyone.
It's like they say, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism.
Right, right.
It's about recognizing that there's all this diversity within the autism community itself.
Exactly. And that's something that one of these articles highlighted so beautifully.
Yeah.
It actually featured interviews with several autistic adults,
Okay.
each with their own kind of unique experiences,
Yeah.
perspectives, aspirations. And what really struck me was how they all challenged this notion of like a single narrative
Yeah.
about autism.
Because there's no right way to be autistic, just like
Yeah.
there's no right way to be human.
Precisely, precisely. And this article really drove that point home.
Yeah.
One individual talked about how much they valued their autistic identity, how it shaped their creativity
Yeah.
and their way of seeing the world.
Mm-hmm.
Another person talked about, the challenges they faced with sensory overload and social anxiety, but also about the incredible support that they received from their family and from the autistic community.
It's a good reminder that everyone's experience is valid and valuable in its own way.
Absolutely. And,
Yeah.
that's why listening to autistic voices is so crucial.
Yeah.
It's not just about, being polite. It's about gaining a deeper understanding of, like, the complexities of autism, the challenges that are faced, and, like, the solutions that will actually make a difference.
And that brings us back to the heart of this whole deep dive.
Right.
It's moving beyond just awareness to action.
Okay.
So for our listener out there who is clearly very invested in understanding this topic more, what are some concrete steps that they can take to be a part of creating a more inclusive and accepting world for autistic individuals?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And the answer is it's multifaceted, right?
Okay.
But first and foremost, educate yourself.
Okay.
Go beyond just the headlines and seek out resources
Okay.
that are actually created by autistic individuals themselves. There are incredible books and blogs and podcasts and organizations out there that are sharing such authentic stories and insights.
One of the articles that you sent actually recommended a documentary by an autistic filmmaker.
Yes, love that.
Which I thought was a really cool recommendation.
Yes, and that's what we need more of.
Yeah.
We need more autistic people telling their own stories, sharing their own perspectives, because when we control the narrative, we control the perception.
It's about shifting those power dynamics a little bit, giving a voice to those who have traditionally been spoken for.
100%. And then, beyond education, look for ways to get involved in your own community.
Yeah.
Are there local organizations that are supporting autistic individuals and their families? Can you volunteer your time?
Right.
Can you donate resources?
Right.
Even small acts of allyship can make a big difference.
And I imagine that even being more mindful of our language and how we talk about autism can go a really long way, too.
Huge. Words matter.
Yeah.
Retire phrases like, suffering from autism or burdened with autism. Autism's not a disease.
Right.
It's just a different way of being, a different way of experiencing the world.
And instead of seeing those differences as deficits, we can really celebrate the unique strengths and talents that autistic individuals bring to our communities, our workplaces, our families.
Now you're talking, that's what true inclusion looks like.
Yeah.
Valuing neurodiversity, not just tolerating it.
This deep dive has been incredibly eye-opening.
Good.
I feel like I've learned so much, so thank you so much for sharing your expertise.
My pleasure.
And passion with us today.
Happy to do it. And, remember, this conversation doesn't end here.
Right.
Keep learning, keep listening, keep challenging your own assumptions.
Yeah.
Because together we can create a world where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued for who they truly are.
I love that. Such a powerful message. So thank you again so much for joining me on this deep dive.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, as always, thank you for being here and for being a part of this really important conversation.